right, hello everybody, and welcome to the Great Lakes Permaculture Design Collaborative Podcast. I'm Milton Dixon, and I'm here with William Faith.
And I'm Rhonda Baird.
We've been getting together trying to push the edges of what we can do with computers and media and working together.
To innovate permaculture practices in design and education.
What are we talking about today? We had a plan.
So,
We did. We're talking about the permaculture design course
GLPDC.info.
and what are some of the benefits of taking it and why
do that
people
one again.
don't. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool.
Okay.
Oh, you just froze.
Yeah, it's
What am I going to do when you freeze? I'm going to sing a song.
no. don't do that.
Okay.
I mean, you can sing a song. I don't want me singing a song. Yeah.
No. That would be kind of rough.
Yeah. So permaculture design courses. And that other piece of this is that we want to get to is how does this fit with the moment that we're in now?
Yeah.
And is it, is that something that, kind of began in the 80s and belonged in the 80s, or is it kind of still like what's going on with it?
Right. Because it's this old thing, right? It's an old model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, you froze. I think we'll let's do it.
Okay.
Let's see what happens.
So, yeah. Do you want to do an intro?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GLPDC podcast, Great Lakes Permaculture Design Collaborative. My name is Milton Dixon. I'm here with Rhonda Baird over there next to me. And oftentimes we have William Faith, but he's a rock star. He's on tour, so that's all right.
That's right now.
But we're here to talk about permaculture. Rhonda freezes occasionally. There she is back though.
Yeah.
So what are we going to be talking about today, Rhonda?
So we're talking today about the permaculture design course.
Okay.
What from our experience in teaching, what draws people to the course. How do they know like when it's right for them? What are they looking for out of it? What we think turns people off from the course sometimes. Why maybe it's not a good idea to take the course. Yeah,
that's some good discussion. And also, you said something about just the time we find ourselves in, right? And I was really interested. The PDC was kind of came out of late 70s, 80s kind of time frame, and that's not where we are anymore. And maybe it's not appropriate. Maybe it's or maybe it is, right? And I think that's maybe something we can delve into a little bit here.
Yeah. So, the course permaculture design, of course, came out of this ecological awareness and this awareness of limits and things that arose in the 60s and 70s, and
right.
Bill Mollison particularly took that ideas that he developed with David Holmgren around the world and taught courses, and then the people he taught courses, and we're 3 or 4 generations into that now of teachers and people, and I think it's really interesting because it sort of parallels other movements throughout our social histories, like Back to the Land movement,
mm-hmm.
or there's a lot of connection between the permaculture movement and the eco-village design movement around the globe,
right?
And then also it's
transition towns there.
Transition towns coming in, in
right.
the 90s, thousands,
right.
late 90s. So there's like really interesting. There's like all these layers and connections that have evolved over time, and thinking about what was going on in the 70s, 80s when the design course came about, and that response of people need to know how an ecosystem works, what's going on with the natural world.
Yeah.
How to build and think and use technology for themselves.
Different examples how that can kind of play out. The different technologies can integrate in kind of an eco-sensitive way, right?
Right. Like, is it appropriate for us? I just had someone just put up on a list, like, that's concerned with solar energy. They're like, how do we reduce our energy use, right? So central air uses a lot of energy. In my area, it's coal-based energy.
Right.
And so, a better option is, deal with frizzy hair and high humidity and not use air conditioning, or,
Shade your house.
Shade your house with
right.
large trees, instead of cutting down the trees that are really close to the house, closer to the house,
right.
not like right up on your foundation, but the ones that can shade your house over time.
Right.
Like, you recognize the value, the cost savings of that, move the garden somewhere else.
Well, and that's the problem I have. I have a very shaded yard, and I've got this little corner. I've got I think a quarter acre, but only about 100 square feet. Is it 1,000 square feet? 100 by 100? Yeah, 1,000 square feet. A real tiny portion, that actually gets sun and gets the useful for any gardening.
Yeah, but I have the same situation. I live in a house with a 70-year-old silver maple on the south side.
Yeah, that's exactly,
And the cost savings, of the cost savings of having that tree on the south side, it means our garden is in the front yard on the north side, and that's fine. It's interesting and full of life and productive with things that need a lot of sun, and I still garden in the shade.
Yeah. Right.
That's the permaculture design thinking with that. So, I think so. The permaculture design course is really, it was set up recognizing people need, like, we just don't get exposed to, and I would say even less now than in the 80s.
Kind of remedial, information in a lot of ways.
It is. And so ecological systems, built environments and technologies, and then social pieces, right?
Yeah.
And it's a dichotomy, or maybe it's ironic is a better word to say. We have more information about the failures of the global ecosystem. We get bombarded with that information, and yet there's less basic understanding of soil and water. I mean, basic understanding, and then caretaking of the commons at this point.
Yeah, I hear stuff all the time in the media, and kind of ask some just they say things like oh gosh, what kinds of things do they say, like
World Overshoot Day is July 29th or something this year.
Sure. The population exponential growth, and we're pushing 7 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like and I think some people kind of then get fixated on that as being, well, that's the problem. But if you kind of understand how these ecosystems work and how things actually function, you might say maybe the problem is that we've had enough food to feed, what they say, like 14 billion people or something.
Like I've heard 12 billion and 14 billion as possibilities. Like,
so
we could
a lot more than we currently have. Well, so of course the population is going to increase to match that, right? Then it gets a lot trickier. How do we then produce less food to bring the population down? I don't know. That's just getting into the weeds a little bit, but
and we know that food production in terms of calories isn't really the problem.
Right.
There's an issue with food distribution, and there's a problem with nutrient dense foods. So but I think is in our society, we hear, oh, from this segment, oh, we need more nutrient dense food, eat these superfoods that are trendy, or.
And then it becomes like a consumer solution.
Exactly.
Right. Which is in part the problem in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that the world is there to be consumed, which it's not.
And you said this consumer solution. I think that's one of the really interesting things about people who go through permaculture design course and they get, really kind of works on them is that they start producing. They switch their mindsets. They may not produce anywhere near, 100% of what they want to be producing.
I don't.
And it's a misconception that permaculture people produce 100% of everything they have because.
Right. Well, that's the whole self-sufficient, dream that is just a dream, and we're never going to be self-sufficient.
Yeah, it's a fallacy, but that switch from consumer to producer.
Yes.
That empowerment that takes place, that little switch in thinking, the paradigm shift is really valuable for people. And I think that's most of what I've seen people want and get out of the permaculture design course.
Yeah.
Along with a bazillion tools ideas to explore.
There's also something about I've talked about it with friends, like there's kind of this summer camp kind of feel
at a residential course.
It's a residential course, even at our weekend course to some extent. It was like these little weekends of I don't know what it was, but the community element really comes in strong. Mm-hmm. I think in those. Mm-hmm. And to go through the process of learning all that material at once, which is kind of an overload in some ways, and I think it's meant to be an overload to kind of push you into another state of thinking. Mm-hmm. But with those people, it's kind of this community action, that we don't get. I go home and here I am in my house, and barely see my next door neighbors, and I see them when they're mowing the lawn. Great, that's great, and
you don't hang out.
Yeah.
I think definitely the community piece, and to extend that to find people who share your values and then support each other after the course. That's one of the things that really I think people are also looking for and find, or maybe they're surprised by it, because so many of us kind of go through life and we think we're the only ones, and then we're not, so that's, it's really fun. It is powerful. And I think it's a fun piece to facilitate, actually in the course, that sharing that happens between students. So it's, it's a real honor to be part of that, of those courses, and those investments of time and energy that people make in themselves.
Well, and maybe we should talk about the some of the barriers, or and maybe people that it's not ideal for. Yeah. Definitely it's a time commitment, whether you do it, stretched out, do an online course that's a little bit at a time, or weekend courses like we were doing, or the whole full-on residential course. Like that's I think something that it's not, there's no space for that in our current paradigms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is really hard for people, especially if they have young children to care for. Yeah, it's really hard. I've had residential more in the past than I do today in courses, but I've definitely had parents come where one parent is taking the course and the other parent is there, or a friend is there as a caregiver to say, like a nursing child or a young child, and that can put it's both a strain and a benefit to those courses as soon as you bring children in. Into more of an adult space. It's really interesting. I've supported though.
They changed the flow. They kind of create, in some ways, enough of a disruption that you have to focus a little bit more, and because you focus a little bit more, you're actually more on top of the material and more into it.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So, yeah.
And another is financial, and whether it's the missed work or just the cost in general. I mean, like it doesn't cost. It's not free.
Right.
But it's also, I mean, knowing from the other side, it's a heck of a lot of, work to put it on, to promote it, to if you're included meals and lodging and all
and
sorts
the years of building experience and competency in a lot of these areas, right? So
right.
Yeah, it's a big part. And I have to say also, like, and not just our course, but a lot of other courses, people really try to make it affordable, try to find scholarship money or work trade or, we've done sliding scale stuff, to try and make it more affordable payment plans, however we can, to get people in the course that want to take the course.
Yeah.
But there's still, just a lot of people don't even know the course exists. They don't know there is such a thing as permaculture, or they feel like that's for other people. Like it would, like they don't see it as possibility.
And that I don't want to keep a garden. I don't care about nature.
Right. Or I don't have land of my own.
Right. Oh, that's a huge one. And I think the opposite is actually true. That I think everybody should kind of, if everyone could share in those skills, if everyone could, have that information, whether they're, whether they work at the local grocery store, or whether they're, in childcare, wherever they are, whether they're farmers, right, whatever it is. But I think it's this is kind of information that needs to permeate everywhere.
Yeah.
And really permeate, right? I mean, I think doctors, dentists, right? Architects, for sure. Would benefit from just understanding, how this, just how nature works. How identifying patterns and seeing the world in just that different way. I know I did. My past life, I used to teach music lessons, and there was a point where, like, I got really comfortable in my permaculture, and I was like, oh, I understood that, like, these little kids are a system, in the family system, and like it just felt easier to approach it, and with that understanding, knowing that there's a lot of things that I can't control, and and it's an interaction. It's not like this, you do this and come back next week and we'll get this result.
And so maybe it's just helpful to say, permaculture design is really about systems thinking and problem solving.
Yeah.
Who in the world is not trying to solve problems? Right? So, that's how it can be applied to this, teaching environment, this educational environment you're describing with your students and parents. This whole, social system is an ecosystem, isn't that
exactly.
Third phase of the design course, right?
And what are the pieces that are necessary?
Yeah. So this is, we were talking a little bit about, like, wanting to talk about how is the design course still relevant? Well, we still live on Earth, and there are still ecosystems everywhere around us that need care.
For now, yeah.
Yeah. And, so, yeah. And people,
Right.
and social systems that can improve, that are certainly challenged in a lot of ways. Right. So, I think when people start looking and they get really frightened about what's, coming down the pipe, it's, not necessarily a helpful thing to freeze up. I think whether you end up taking a course or not, just that active practice of doing something.
Yep.
Is
well, and I think that's
important.
where a lot of people fall down that actually have taken the course, is that, oh, I never got around to using that stuff. Well, why not? You have every opportunity every day of your life to put this kind of thinking, you know, patterns and the systems and, you know, the whole thing into practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is an essential part of the practice of permaculture is to not only have this kind of the PDC where you learn the information, but you need to put it into practice, and you need to try things and have them fail, and try other things and have them be sort of successful and spur you on into whatever comes next.
Yeah,
it's super important.
It is, and to know, like, we all have different things we're bringing. Like, I saw on some list today, somebody's breeding this new variety of fruit, and it's like, that's fascinating. That's not in my skill set to be doing that. You know, I mean, theoretically I could go out and do it, but it's not my passion, you know. But that's just really exciting that someone that's their niche, you know, that's what they're doing, you know.
Well, a lot of these things too, the kind of transformations that I think we expect from permaculture, they don't, you don't like conceive of this system and then put it in and you're done. It's this journey, it's this process. You know, 10 years is not unreasonable to start. Well, right? But you need to get started, and you need to engage with the world around you and whatever it is that you're working with, right? Whether it's fruit trees and some new kind of fruit, or community systems, you know, social systems.
Yeah. And I think that's a critical point, because there are people who publicize what they do, and it looks like it's the big reveal of this grand transformation that they accomplished on their own, single-handedly, with no support in a very short amount of time. And it's like, oh, actually, you know, you know, either that took them years.
But I mean, you just throws up there, but you know, a lot of, I think what I see on YouTube is people, well, you see their successes, you don't see their failures, right? And they always try to show it in the best light. So even if it is a you know, like something they never ever would do again, they still try to make it seem like this big fancy thing that they did, and then you have no idea whether they, you know, it's like they did it once and they're like, well, screw that, that was awful, or, you know, this integral part of their lives. You have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of good, and I've seen a lot of good come out of YouTube, you know, short YouTube clips, because it inspires people. But I think you're right. And so yeah, I really want people to pick up pieces and not just pieces. I mean, that's one of my soapbox things about.
You froze again there.
Darn it! That's one of my soapbox things about YouTube.
Tell us again, Rhonda, what you want. Tell us again what you want. I lost you again. Try it one more time.
So I want people to go out and do permaculture, but I do think it's worth the time and investment to get a sense of the whole of permaculture, and not learn permaculture from YouTube snippets.
Yeah.
Because those are just pieces.
Those are the pieces that the thinking might have created along the way, but until you really get a sense of how that thinking works and how to problem solving, right? How do you approach these problems? Because that's all the YouTube video is. It's a problem with a solution, right? And that's you know, that's just the last 10%.
Yeah.
So.
Well, all right.
That's
been good. Yeah.